Our special guest again today is Dr. Vicki Rackner, and she is part of the Fellow of American College of Surgeons. She has written several books, as you can see here. She has been interviewed by I would probably say by now, hundreds of different people, including us at times. She's written for the Physicians Money Digest. She is talking with doctors every single day. And she's also our medical director and on the board of MRMA, M-R-M-M-A, and that is our Medical Revenue Management Association of America. So, Dr. Rackner, it's good to have you here. If you could, join us video, and we'll get this thing started off right away. Good to see you this afternoon, ma'am.
Well, thank you for the opportunity to be here.
Absolutely. Listen, we've got slides that we can go through. I thought just what we need to do is just have a good old-fashioned talk and interview and conversation. I'm going to be monitoring the questions here, Dr. Rackner, but why don't you kind of just lead us into, from a doctor's position, what do you know about the COVID-19? How is it affecting doctors? And actually, bottom line, how is it affecting their bottom line?
All right. Well, thanks for the questions, Eric. I appreciate it. And I appreciate the people who are here. As a serial entrepreneur myself, I know what it's like to look at potential opportunities and see if it's right for you. And I just want to recognize your wisdom in seeing the opportunity here. So the information that you're going to be getting from me is a little different than the information you might get anyplace else, because you're going to be hearing about what's going on from a medical insider. So I am a physician. Physicians tend to be very private. And so I can go behind the red velvet rope and gain access to what's going on, for example, in the American College of Surgeons. And I can get in my private Facebook groups with other doctors and let you know what's going on. So you are about to get some information that that you won't just get anyplace else. So anyway, here is what's going on for doctors. It is really tough out there. It's really tough. So if you think about COVID-19, our major therapeutic intervention here is to flatten the curve, right? It's to make sure that the demand for healthcare services does not exceed the supply. So on the news, you're watching information about the hardworking doctors and nurses and EMTs and people who are in grocery stores who are like literally risking their own lives in order to save the lives of others. But another thing that we're doing to flatten the curve here is that we're deferring elective cases. So a surgeon like me, probably about 90% of my cases were elective. Now, if somebody came into the emergency room with appendicitis, well, of course, that still needs to be done. But believe it or not, things like cancer operations and even getting chemotherapy are considered to be elective cases. So we have this huge cohort of doctors who are at home right now, twiddling their thumbs, and they never expected to be here. So this is kind of a crisis time for doctors because we don't have strong business skills. We never imagined that we would be in the situation in which our revenue decreased by 90% overnight. So doctors are hurting. And according to the American College of Surgeons, doctors are not going to be getting back to operating for another couple of months. Right now, they're projecting the third quarter. So think about that. You know, somebody who is used to earning $500,000, $1 million a year might be wondering how they're going to pay their mortgage. I mean, hopefully doctors have some savings, but a whole bunch do not, and they are very, very frightened. Okay, so why is this an opportunity for you? Well, there are things that doctors can do today to intervene in this cash flow crunch. And I'm giving talks all over the US about how doctors can do this because I've been a serial entrepreneur for the past 2 decades. So I've got a lot of ideas about how doctors can pay their mortgage, how they can pay their kids' college tuition. But one of the first things that I tell them is you should go and collect your accounts receivables. So
Yeah.
the way that doctors make money is that we see patients, we identify a diagnostic and procedure code, and then somebody like an ABS licensee sends that off to the insurance company. About 30% of those claims get rejected. And then the doctors decide what they're going to do with the rejected claims. And if they're billing in-house, many of them just don't do anything at all. They put them in a drawer. And what
Right.
that means is that if you look at a doctor today, they have tens to hundreds of thousands of dollars in accounts receivables. So the low-hanging fruit, the first intervention that I mentioned to these doctors is outsource your medical billing so you can collect on that money that's already owed to you. That's how you can pay your mortgage and your college tuition until the time that you're back to the operating room, that you're back seeing patients and administering chemotherapy. So this is a huge opportunity for you to help doctors through this acute crisis. So that's intervention number one. Intervention number
Mhm.
two I tell doctors about is get involved with telemedicine. So this technology has been around forever. But what hasn't been around forever is the ability of doctors to get paid for these telemedicine visits. So in this COVID crisis, Medicare, Medicaid, and private insurance companies are all now paying for these services. So
Mhm.
you have the opportunity as an ABS licensee to bring solution number two to doctors to alleviate their major problem. So this is why I see this as being a great opportunity for you right now. I think this has always been a great opportunity because doctors need the kinds of services that ABS licensees have. But right now, there is acute financial pain, and you have the solution. So, again, I recognize and honor your brilliance in seeing this opportunity and exploring this a little further. Sorry to go on for so long, Eric, but I'm really passionate about this.
Well, there's no doubt that you're passionate because it's number one, it's your colleague, it's people that you know, and you've worked with, and you cried with, and you've laughed with, and you see that they've struggled and now they're struggling now. I just mentioned to you whenever you and I were talking that I found this one article that the COVID-19 threatens to close physicians' offices nationwide, and that's all across the board. It's not just the family care doctor, but it is, like you said, it could be the surgeons or the specialties that are out there that are just not being able to collect because either one, they're not seeing a big volume of patients. But what about all of the claims that they had before COVID-19 that weren't getting paid? And so you're talking that this is a great opportunity right now for doctors to be looking back, just a few months. And I know that, with Medicare, you can go all the way back a year. So who knows how much money is out there on the table?
I spoke with a surgeon who has literally $1 million in accounts receivable. Now, I
That's
don't know about
amazing.
you, but I wouldn't mind collecting that $1 million and getting a percentage of that.
Yes, absolutely. Matter of fact, there's somebody that came in just said, Norma says, thank you, Dr. Wagner, for your wisdom here. And that's true. I mean, because folks, you're hearing it directly from a doctor who is talking with other doctors. This kind of tell us right now, if you're on the side of these folks that are listening in, what are some of the things that they can be doing right now as they're kind of ramping up their ideas of getting involved in this business opportunity?
Okay, so again, I'm a serial entrepreneur and I've invested in things that haven't worked out very well. And so from 2 decades of experience, when an opportunity comes my way, I sort of know how to evaluate this opportunity. So
Mm-hmm.
the first question is there pain? Are people actually
Right.
out looking for a solution to a problem? The answer is a big yes. Um, doctors, well, before COVID-19, about half of
Right.
doctors were behind in retirement planning. Doctors were burned out. And so doctors were very much into working smarter and not harder. Um, so there was always a role for the ABS licensee. So there is a need. Okay, are there going to be buyers? Well, if you were looking
Mm.
into a restaurant franchise, things might be a little different. Or if you were looking to help restaurant franchisees, things would be different because these people may or may not have money, right? We
Right.
know with certainty that you're going to have buyers that actually have money. Medicine is not going to be outsourced to India. We're going to continue to need doctors. And in fact, this is a growth industry. So that box
Mm.
is checked. And then the third question is there a way of making a connection? And again, the answer with that is yes. I was just speaking with one of my private coaching clients, and we were talking about how to reach out to
Mm-hmm.
organizations, associations, and basically have me share ideas about how to generate more revenue. So for example, the American College of Surgeons has a practice protection committee. Like they're worried about surgeons going out of business. So what can
Wow.
they do right now in order to help doctors get through this? And by the way, one of the federal programs that's going to help all physicians is this advanced Medicare payment. So
Right.
any doctor can ask to get these payments in advance, up to 3 months of payments in advance. So anyway, there are real ways that you can help real clients with real money move forward. So today, as you're looking for opportunities, I just think this is a terrific one.
Well, what makes it a good opportunity right now, again, is all the different services that we actually have for doctors. I'm going to put up this one slide here because there are so many different services outside of this billing, because you can see here, we've got Quick Collect, we've got Audit Guard, we've got these choice pays. Obviously, the whole revenue cycle management of everything of what we have here. And folks, if you're on the webinar last week, you heard Patrick and I really kind of do a much deeper dive into what the doctors are doing, like telemedicine and telehealth and all of this, and then where that's going to go. I mean, Dr. Rackner, you and I talked about that healthcare right now is changing. The face of healthcare and the way that doctors engage with their patients is going to change drastically right now. Can you go a little bit deeper in what your knowledge is about telehealth and kind of where you kind of see this going?
It's the future. There is no question about it. Again, I sort of divide the world up into primary care and the specialists. If I were an ABS
Mm-hmm.
licensee, I would go after the specialists because they generate higher incomes, but not every
Right.
licensee goes that way. But there's no question, no matter what kind of doctor you're going to work with, they are going to deliver telemedicine in one way or another. And this is
Yeah.
relatively new. Physicians are not early adapters, shall we say. So knowing what kind of patient is a good fit for telemedicine is going to be new. Really figuring out how to ramp up and how to market the service and how to generate revenue is going to be really important. So I created an entire course about how doctors can jump into telemedicine, and I've got things like, how you look professional on camera and how you get the word out that you're actually delivering these kinds of services. But I can just give
Mm-hmm.
you an example from my own personal experience. My son is living in a different city. He was showing me this little kitty that the family just adopted. And we hung up, and like no more than 3 minutes later, he called me. He's got like blood dripping down his cheek. This cat had clawed at his face, and the claw actually got into the white of my son's eye.
Oh
Perfect
my.
kind of thing for a telemedicine visit. So I think we're going to be thinking about this in a whole new way. It's sort of like when the smartphone first came out, it was sort of like,
Right.
that's nice, but it's really changed the way that we interact. And I think that there
It
is no
has.
going back. Further thing is that I think a lot of patients are rightfully concerned about, do I want to put myself at risk by going into a doctor's office where there's a high incidence of being exposed to COVID-19, even with
Right.
cleaning. So there's going to be patient demand and physician desire. So I see this as a future.
Yeah, and for those that want to know even more about it, I mean, get in touch with your business coach that you're working here with American Business Systems, because even, I mean, Dr. Wagner, right now, people are just thinking this whole e-visit or this telehealth medicine is like, okay, like you said, which is great for quickly getting in touch with the doctor right away. I mean, my wife today got a visit with her doctor over the internet, but it's going to go further than that, because we also know that every day 10,000 new baby boomers are turning 65 every day, and each one of those patients has at least one chronic condition, and that's a revenue stream for the doctors to add into their practice, what's called chronic care management or remote patient monitoring. And some of the studies that I've seen and the calculations that I see just on that alone could bring in anywhere from a minimum of $16,000 to another $35,000 to $40,000 a month. And if we think about it, that could be another $300,000 to $400,000 a year in revenue for your primary care, all the way to your podiatrist, to your pain management doctors, to your cardiologists. I mean, we're talking specialists here that can actually do all of these types of services. So it's really going to go to what I say the next level. And then as an ABS licensee, then you can do their billing on top of that. So that increases the licensee's revenue, because obviously you're helping the doctor generate more capital going into that. So you're right. It's going to be, I love how you've kind of said it. The doctors are kind of late adopters, but the COVID-19 has certainly generated a ton of new things here going on for the doctors.
Yeah, and there's another difference now too. That is that doctors are not busy right now, right? They're at home because they're not seeing patients. And so it's much easier to engage with them. Now, things are going to change when doctors go back to the operating room, when they go back to seeing patients. But we've got this window here where you can go in and solve a big problem for doctors in a way that's going to help you build your business.
Right. Yeah, and so let's talk about some strategies here right now. There is a question that's come in. Let me see if I can grab some of these questions for us. This is from Umish, and he's saying, I live in St. Louis, Missouri, and in the past few years, many doctors who were in private practice have been bought or sold, or they've merged into hospital groups. So my question is, currently, what is the market like for an ABS licensee to sign up new doctor clients?
Okay, so great question. And if you think about how many doctors are in St. Louis, you don't need to get all of those doctors in order to have a thriving business for yourself. On average, Eric, about how many doctor clients does the average ABS licensee have?
Depending on how long they've been around, but we would say that anywhere from 3 to 5 doctors is really kind of the average, and each one of those is going to generate about $35,000 to $40,000 a year. So with 3 doctors, you're probably right at the 6-figure mark.
Okay, so if you think about that, then, even if you have sort of the average that about 70% of doctors are employed and about 30% are self-employed, within that 30%, you should be able to find 3 to 5 doctors to work with. But there's another thing that I haven't even started talking about yet, which is that hospitals are changing too. So the Mayo Clinic, who is the biggest employer in the state of Minnesota, they just
Mm-hmm.
announced a projected, get this, $3 billion deficit in 2010. They
Wow.
generate about 10 billion a year, so that is a 30% reduction. So how are they managing? They're furloughing physicians and giving physicians a 15% across the board cut. So it may well be that with all of these financial institutions experiencing their own financial hardship, we may see the trend in the opposite direction. We may see more physicians going into private practice now to have a little
Right.
more control.
And, we were already kind of seeing that shift already. And it sounds like I'm echoing, and I'm on my speaker, my headset. I may switch here in a moment because I want to make sure everybody's hearing me okay. But, we're already starting to see somewhat of a shift prior to, we could start to say pre-COVID-19, that there were some doctors thinking about getting out of the group practices and being employees of hospitals. Do you think that we might see a shift? I think you kind of alluded to it, so I want to make sure we're kind of tracking with you. Do you think we may see a shift of some doctors getting out of that and then going back into private practice?
I do, because, most doctors don't want to have bosses. They're kind of like me. And in a sense, they sort of sell a little of their autonomy for the certainty, right? The certainty of hours, the certainty of income. But what this time has shown them is that they really don't have that kind of security. I mean, can you imagine not having a job or not getting paid or being asked to take a 15% pay cut? So that's leading more and more physicians to at least think about taking their autonomy back and going back into private practice. So I predict that we are going to see a trend towards more doctors going into private practice.
Judith is asking a question here. Do I understand that telehealth is a service that ABS offers and have used, because I've used telehealth for 10 years. It is, Judith. Not only do we have it inside of the iClaim EMRX platform, and I'll show that to you here in just a moment, but we also have a standalone telehealth platform as well. So we've got both of the services that you might need to provide for doctors right now. And then some of those services, like the telehealth medicine, can actually be utilized by doctors for free. And I'll say that kind of saying it because you talk about a great door opener. You talk about no cost, no obligation for now during the COVID-19 part of it. But then it gives you the opportunity to kind of get your foot in the door, build that relationship with that doctor. And then when things change, then you've already got a relationship with that doctor. Then you can introduce them to chronic care management and remote patient monitoring and all of this other stuff that actually generates more money. And you talk about, like I said, from a licensee standpoint, Dr. Ratner, that is a great opportunity, and especially for doctors that are trying to come out of these group practices or employments from hospitals, and they're trying to figure out, gosh, how am I going to I got to make a splash whenever I get out of here. What am I going to do to separate myself from all of my other colleagues? And I think all the services that ABS has is going to be good for them to go, okay, I've got this suite of services, and I've got one group of people that can help me, and that's an ABS licensee.
Yes, physicians are seeing the value of multiple revenue streams in their practice. So, having those tools in your toolbox is something that's going to be very helpful to physicians.
Right. Here's another question. Fortis is asking, is this webinar only for doctors? I don't know if where that's getting, but you want to kind of help answer that. You're really talking to the potential licensees here with American Business Systems.
They would be welcome to attend too. In fact, on Friday at 11 a.m. Central, I am going to be delivering this webinar to financial advisors because, like ABS licensees, financial advisors want to help doctors take control of their financial destiny. So I'm giving them the content and then showing them how they can use this content as a marketing tool. And Eric, I would be happy to have ABS licensees join in.
That's awesome. Judith is also saying my general physician left for that reason from the hospital last year. So, you know, here's somebody that's looking to get into this business with us here at ABS. Apparently, Judith has had some great experience and some years of experience in the healthcare industry already. And, you know, we're seeing doctors leave hospitals, going back into private practice.
Yeah. So if you're really serious about this, about becoming an ABS licensee, here's a little something that I would recommend doing. You already know doctors. You know, doctors have treated your family. Doctors might be, you know, your friend. You might go to church with doctors. If they are in the trenches right now, this is a tough time for them. I mean, they know that they are putting their own lives at risk and potentially the lives of their family members. And, you know, there's this national movement to go outside at 7 p.m. and thank those people in the trenches. But, you know, you could send doctors a note. If a doctor treated you or a family member, you could just say, hey, listen, thank you for the care that you have delivered. Here's how you made a difference in our lives. I just wanted to let you know how grateful that I am. And in fact, I was so moved by that care that I feel inspired right now to reach out and help the doctors who serve the community. You know, I am helping with this cash flow crunch. If you know of anybody who might be interested in some resources, let me know because I'd be happy to talk with them. So you can just start planting the seeds right now and reaching out. And you don't even have to know the doctor. I mean, you could potentially, if you know what kind of doctor you want to work with, you could just get a list and send a little thank you note to doctors. I personally had a house fire, and every time I see a firefighter, it's sort of like, thank you for the work that you do. Let me tell you my story. And I think that these acts of gratitude, I know that they make a huge difference for doctors. And so it's kind of a gracious marketing campaign that you can get started with even before you formally get started.
Well, one of the things I want to you know, kind of go down and explore right now with you is of your involvement with American business systems. Obviously, your role as a medical doctor, a retired surgeon, how you are actually helping our licensees currently right now. I'm going to put up on the screen right now, obviously, the book that you and Patrick wrote on the Thriving New Medical Practice. But just prior to that, there's something that you're doing that you're helping licensees currently. This is something that can be done without them having to go out and about and knock on doors, because I think we are all in agreement that kind of doing the face-to-face marketing is not going to be acceptable for quite some time. Let us kind of talk to us about this letter that you constructed and how you as a doctor can actually introduce someone who's like an ABS licensee.
Okay, so I've got these 10 laws of physician engagement. Doctors are wired differently than business-minded people. And I think one of the reasons people struggle making sales to doctors is that they just do not understand this cultural divide.
Right.
And I've got a favorite episode of Shark Tank. Eric, I hope you're not tired of this story.
No, go right ahead.
This doctor went into the Shark Tank to get funding for his company Syndaver. He sold synthetic cadavers. This was $1 billion industry. He'd already had a couple million in sales. The sharks were all engaged. And I thought, this guy's going to get a 5-shark deal. But then Mr. Wonderful started asking questions about revenue, about profitability. And the doctor said on national TV, well, I suppose I could be making a lot of money, but money's not really that important to me. What's important is making a difference. And with that answer, 4 sharks were out. He got to deal with Robert Herjavec that fell apart in a couple of weeks. And what happened? He wasn't speaking the language of the buyers, right?
Right.
For sharks, money is everything. Like, they want to make sure that their entrepreneur is going to be a good steward of the money so that they get it back.
Right.
All right. So imagine a different reality show. Let's just call it Surgeon's Lounge. So you walk in and there are 5 surgeons in these plush leather chairs. You want to do a deal with as many of them as possible. A huge mistake that most people make is that they make the same mistake that that doctor made. You know, you're trying to influence the buyer, right? So you want to talk the buyer's language. You want to help them you want to show them how they're going to get what they want. And the doctor on Shark Tank said it best. Doctors are there to make a difference. And so these 10 laws of physician engagement sort of guide the way that you want to navigate this cultural divide so you're most likely to be successful. Well, one of the laws of physician engagement is that the most influential person in a doctor's life is another doctor. So if I were an ABS licensee, what I would do is work really, really hard using ideas that you will learn about to get that first doctor and then coach that doctor to talk with other doctors about you, because that's just the way things work. That's the way I found my outsource biller when I was in practice. I just checked around. Hey, do you outsource your billing? Who do you use? And when the same name kept on coming up again and again, and these doctors said really nice things about her, I sort of figured, okay, that's my guy, that's my gal. So anyway, one special piece of value that ABS licensees have is that they can leverage ABS's relationship with me. So you will have marketing tools that are books that have my name on it. So you have your name associated with the name of a physician. I have given ABS licensees permission to send out a letter from me. So my return address is on it. No gatekeeper is going to throw away a letter from another doctor saying, you know, this is why you might be interested in speaking with this person. So in essence, again, you've got a doctor opening up the red velvet rope for you. And I cannot begin to tell you how this sets you apart from any of your competition. This is an opportunity that nobody else in medical billing has. And
Right.
it really gives you the competitive advantage.
Yeah, and then the book, like we said down here, we've actually got it written in such a way that you, as the licensee, can put your name down at the bottom, as Dr. Ratner said, to be associated with a doctor as a certified medical revenue manager. And imagine sending out that first letter. I think it's a brilliant. It's kind of like I look at it as a 1-2 punch. You know, if I were a licensee out there trying to get involved and get in front of doctors right now, because I know a lot of doctors, like you said, they're sitting home. And so, but they're still getting their mail, they're still going through it, and they're probably actually themselves for the first time actually going through their own mail. And imagine getting a thank you letter that's saying, hey, doctor, just thank you. You serviced me once before and you helped me, you helped my family member, my mom or my dad or my children. And then a few weeks later, you follow back up with it with a letter from you as that introduction, as we're seeing here, and then that they've enclosed this book, The New Thriving Medical Practice. And at a time whenever they actually got time to actually read. I mean, this would be a great opportunity for putting one of the marketing strategies that is learned here at American Business Systems.
Right. So I need to clarify something because, you know, we doctors first do no harm. So if you are sending a note to a thank you note to a doctor who's treated you or your family, just know that doctors have really rigid boundaries around the doctor-patient relationship. So you don't want to be soliciting your own doctors. But what you can say in a thank you note is, if you know any other doctors who might be interested in ... And then if a doctor raises their hand, that's great. But you want to demonstrate your cultural competency by not trying to solicit your own doctors.
Let's see if there's any questions here. Okay, so here's one from Keith, and you can probably help answer this. As an ABS licensee business, it seems like a debt collector in part. How effective would this be given delinquent payers are nearly impossible to collect from without an attorney? Now, what you were talking about earlier was not necessarily going after the patients, what they owe right now. It could be just after what the insurance companies owe the doctor right now. Am I correct?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
And so it really wouldn't be as that you're debt collecting. It's just these are claims that have been filed already that have never been paid, and they probably have never been followed up on. Okay. So that will kind of help. Now, there are some services that we have here, Keith, that will help out where it doesn't seem as though that you're like a debt collector to the patients. Obviously, there's a patient responsibility, and there's some follow-up that needs to go with that. But even with that, Dr. Rackner, we have found that not a lot of doctors' offices actually go after what we would consider to be patient responsibilities. A lot of these doctors just kind of write off what is actually owed to them from the patients.
Yeah, I don't think in this COVID era there's going to be any doctor who's trying to collect from patients, because too many people are having financial hardships. The insurance companies are not experiencing financial hardships, and that is the bulk of where the revenue can come from.
Someone's asking, Marguerite's asking, so when we're talking about this telemedicine, does this mean that you don't have to physically go to a doctor's office?
That is absolutely correct. So just like we're connecting here over the internet, so too patients and doctors have the ability to do this kind of communication. So the doctor sees the patient sees the doctor can say things like, okay, well, hold your smartphone up to your eyeball, hold your smartphone up to your mouth, and we'll take a look. So there are obviously limitations on what can be done, right? But there's all sorts of new technology that's become available. And here's the other thing to keep in mind, and that's that in about 80% of the time, doctors arrive at a diagnosis just on the basis of history. So just by having this conversation, right? And then they get more information when they do the physical exam. And the first part of the physical exam is inspection. Well, you can still inspect by video conferencing. Now, obviously, you can't do an exam on the belly, although with robotics in the future, who knows? Maybe we will be able to do something like this. So a doctor always needs to be aware of the limitations and make sure that they're being prudent and they're not trying to do too much. So for example, one of my friends is an emergency room doctor in her 70s. She's retired. She wanted to contribute, and it just wasn't safe for her to be in the emergency room. So I suggested telemedicine to her, and she loves it. She absolutely loves it. And she was telling me about this woman who called in because she was having some breathing problems and thought that this might be COVID. And it turns out that she described like the elephant being on her chest. And my friend had to say, why don't you go into the emergency room for what's probably your heart attack? So,
oh my goodness.
When a doctor does telemedicine, they always have the option of saying, look, you need to actually go and be physically seen.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. And it could be, like you said, almost a pre-triage of what to do next without, is this a real emergency? Is this something that you can say, oh, I can tell you something to go down or to the pharmacy and you pick up this over-the-counter med, or I'm going to order some meds for you. because that's exactly what happened with my wife today. She's got this rash that's broken out, and she was able to get in touch with her dermatologist. The dermatologist got to see the rash. It says, "Oh yeah, we know what that is. Let's get you some meds." It saved a trip there for us. It was quick for the doctor because she was able to get to her next. She actually had a moment in time where she could slip that e-visit or a telehealth visit right in the middle of all of that and be able to address that situation. So that was an extra visit for her, which is, like, it's a billable. So it's a billable visit now. So she actually was able to increase her revenue in between two other patients that so you're right. It is really one of the ways of the future and where it's kind of going.
I can tell you that as a surgeon, post-operatively,
Yeah.
wounds get red when they're healing. They can get thick. And it's hard to say over the phone exactly what's going on, but if I could have the capability of saying, okay, put your phone next to the incision, let me take a
Yeah,
look,
right.
that would be very reassuring to me as the surgeon and to the patient.
Well, think of it. I mean, we've been our caretakers of my in-laws for quite some time, and not always could we get my father-in-law out of the house. So he had to see a cardiologist, a dermatologist, because he had neuropathy of the feet, and so he had some things there. Imagine if we could have said, "Hey, dial up the podiatrist and say we need to take a look at his feet and tell us what we need to do. Or is it okay right now?" We can just see a myriad of things. And again, folks, here at ABS is leading in services that a lot of other business opportunities out there, especially in the medical field, are just not being able to keep up with. And so it's exciting to be a part of this. And obviously, you're hearing it from Dr. Rackner. Dr. Rackner, there is a question that came in here from Keith, and I think you may have already addressed this, but I want to make sure that everybody's clear on this. And so he's taking it from, I'm a non-medical professional who has made a living in commercial real estate management. How does a guy like me market this service to doctors? I think you kind of answered that with the letter being addressed. I don't know when his question came in. I want to make sure that people really understand that you, being a part of ABS, you've given the permission to kind of lead out with your letter and your letterhead.
Right. So Keith, and if you want to expand on that, but what I'm sort of hearing is, what kind of credibility do I have? Like, why would a doctor want to do somebody to do revenue management who's done real estate? And the answer is that ABS licensees offer the business perspective that so many doctors lack. There are a lot of doctors out there, good-hearted doctors, who are doing good work, who are just ignoring their cash flow. And, some of them are clinically depressed, some of them are burned out. And what they really need is somebody with your business savvy who can go in and help them work smarter. Right. So whatever your background is, I recommend owning it and bringing that value with you, because what you've done before is going to put you in even a more effective position to help doctors today.
Right, you're correct. Ricardo, I see your question there, and your question needs to be kind of geared towards your business coach that you're working with here. So make sure you just kind of get back with them. They're going to get everybody. If we're not going to get to everybody's question here, we're about 15 minutes before we're closing out here. If we don't get to everybody's question, know that gets filtered back to your business coach that you're working with here. So again, if we don't answer your question, just know that they will be able to help you out here. Here's a question about dental practices. So I'll address that one real quickly. Umish is asking about, are the dental practices a potential client for ABS licensees? They can be, but again, we're really focusing on the medical side. So we're talking about claims that get filed on what's called a CMS 1500 form. And so that's really where we're focusing our attention on, and that's what we do here. Now, there are some opportunities that are coming up and can be right now dealt with dentists but we're kind of focusing in on that part of just the medical side, CMS 1500 form. And you as a surgeon, Dr. Reckner, that's the claim form that you guys file to get your claims processed. All right, let's see if there's any other questions. Let's see. How significant of an organizational change is a transition from a current billing solution to ABS? So that's a great question from Craig. So if they're doing currently, they're billing in-house right now, what kind of changes and what kind of expectations that can we share with the doctor and switching it out from in-house billing to outsourced billing?
Okay, so great question. And I think what you need to understand is that the system has fundamentally been disrupted, and it's never going to go back to the way it was. And so doctors are going to have to get used to a new normal. So if there was any time to bring some new value here, it is now. You know, COVID-19 is going to contribute to the success of lots and lots of businesses. You know, Zoom is doing great business. I think that this is going to be a similar opportunity for revenue managers, for people who are going to help doctors sort of get into the new normal.
All right, so we've got about 10 minutes, Dr. Reckner. Why don't you kind of just take the next few minutes here and just kind of just do what should a licensee, or not a licensee, because these aren't licensees right now, but a potential licensee that's going to come on board with American Business Systems, what other kind of due diligence can you kind of coach them along to do right now? What should they be doing? And then how quickly maybe should they be getting involved in any business right now at all?
Okay, so I see huge opportunities. I am part of a number of masterminds because that is something that helps me get to my next level of performance. And I have seen surprising success stories. Somebody who is selling online saxophone training is doing really well because people are home, they're making investments in themselves. So I would sit down and ask myself, okay, what am I comparing this opportunity to, right? Is my heart pulled in this direction instead of maybe being an ABS licensee? If it is, you might want to ask yourself the tough business questions. Is this a viable business model? Because, you know, this is a time of a lot of uncertainty. There's probably going to be industries that are going out of business. So is this other opportunity going to be something that will be around in 5 years, maybe even next year? And is there a path for revenue generation? Is there a market? Is there a demand? You know, everybody needs to make really, really smart decisions about their money, how they invest their money, whether it's in the stock market or whether it's in a new business venture. So I would really recommend that you make a smart business decision, not based on emotion alone, be guided by intuition, but have somebody vet the opportunity so that you make sure that you're going to get a return on that investment.
Well, Dr. Reckner, thank you for your time. I know that I'm going to do just a quick wrap up here for this afternoon. I appreciate your time. I know that you've been extremely busy. You and I have been exchanging emails and texts and trying to coordinate our own schedules to be able to talk about stuff and then get you prepared for this. So thank you for taking out your time this afternoon, ma'am.
My pleasure. And to all the people on the line, thank you again for your interest. I'm in this business to help doctors. And all of the work that I do with business people are to groom business people to support doctors. Doctors are doing a heroic job right now. They really do need support. And I am here to support you if you decide that you are going to become an ABS licensee, because once the COVID pandemic is over, we're going to be dealing with another pandemic of sort of financial fallout. And
Right.
you could potentially be somebody who helps a doctor get back on their financial feet. So thank you for considering this opportunity. And thank you, Eric, for the invitation to be here.
Thank you, Dr. Wagner. Appreciate you.
Okay, bye-bye.